been talking about this new signing for the Coventry Blaze ice hockey team who's been refused a visa because he spent time in jail in America for conspiracy to commit a murder. 31-year-old Mike Denton was sentenced to 7 years in prison in 2004, and he served just over 5 years before being released on parole in 2009. In a statement, the Coventry Blaze say that Denton has turned his life around and will be a huge asset not only to the local team, but also to the elite league. Luke Walton has been reporting for us here on BBC Coventry in Warwickshire, been out asking people around city centre today, should an ex-offender who says he's reformed be given the benefit of the doubt? Here's what you had to say.
I think it depends on what they've actually done and whether they can be reformed.
I think they do if they're properly reformed and they are given a chance to do good for society. I don't think they should just be pushed aside.
I think the problem is with ex-offenders, they come out of prison hopeful of having a new life, but then because they've got a criminal record, they're faced with unemployment, which unfortunately can often lead them back into the road that ended them up in prison. So I do think it's about society giving people an opportunity to change.
Well, I'm an ex-prisoner myself. I've just not long come out of jail, and I was an alcoholic before I went in. Now I'm reformed because I'm in a dry house at the minute. I've been off the alcohol now for 3 months. And I'm going to carry on staying sober because I couldn't be in a better place at the moment.
Yeah, they should definitely be given a second chance. I think that once someone's, they've done the crime and they've done the time, that they should get the opportunity to show that they're a changed and reformed person.
Real mix of views there. There's even more on my Facebook page tonight. Should an ex-offender who says he's reformed be given the benefit of the doubt? Mark Gibbo Gibson says there are enough criminals and murderers in this country, so most definitely not. Would we be allowed into their country? No, says Mark. If he's not deemed a threat to anyone, he should be allowed in, says Rob Barton. And Diane Stanyard says no chance. And even more to the point, can't Coventry team find a Coventry player, or at least a British player, to play for them? Seriously, Diane posts up on the Facebook page. Well, listening to all of that, and hopefully with his own view on this, is the Executive Director from the charity Unlock. They're the National Association of Reformed Offenders. Chris Bath. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
I know you're also a Warwick graduate as well, aren't you?
I am indeed, yeah. It's nice to be back in touch.
Lovely to hear from you tonight. What do you make of the story of Mike Denton, then?
I think I was really pleased to hear your piece, actually. I can't believe how enlightened the people of Coventry and Warwickshire are. They seem to stand above the rest of the country. I mean, I agree with most of those people in that I think he should be given the opportunity to do something positive with his life. And, that amazing position to be an international sports person means he can be a really powerful role model for young people in Coventry and hopefully inspire them to stay on the straight and narrow. I think the difficulty for people is, how do you make the distinction between a criminal and, a reformed offender or a law-abiding person who's got a criminal conviction? And it is quite difficult to do that. But if you take Mr. Denton's case, turned his life around in recent years, started his own family, doing really well at university. He spent time speaking to several thousand children about making good decisions in their lives and, not giving up on keeping a straight line in life. He's won awards for community involvement. So, as much as anybody could do something to prove to the rest of the community that they understand that they did wrong and that they want to do something better, I think he's done that.
I think what was quite telling in that, Chris, was your initial response there, that you said that despite the people of Coventry, that's sort of an assumption that despite what you heard there, that the rest of the country you feel isn't quite as tolerant as some of the people we heard from there. Do you think we are too ready to jump to judgments with cases like this?
Yeah, I think it's hard to blame the general public for that. I think it's partly to do with politicians playing tough and trying to divide and rule, if you like, and it's partly to do with respect some elements of the media sensationalising crime in a way that's sort of titillating and doesn't really deal with the reality of it. The hard fact is there are 9.2 million people in the UK with criminal records. So 1 in 3 men by the age of 53 have got a criminal record of some sort. It's almost certain that people listening to this programme will have a friend or a family member who's got convictions. People make mistakes. Is that right? No. Should there be consequences for that? Yes, of course there should. But if people genuinely turn their lives around and generally want to do something constructive, it makes absolutely no sense to keep them languishing on benefits when they could be and should be in work and supporting their families and paying taxes. And the sad truth is, it is nigh on impossible to find a job in this country if you've got a criminal record. It's very, very difficult.
So what do you say to, and we've read out some of these comments, what do you say to people like Mark Gibbo Gibson, who says we wouldn't be allowed into their country, would we? I mean, the American approach to these convictions is a lot stricter than ours, isn't it?
I think he's absolutely right. I mean, it's almost like you've got to take some sort of international approach to it because, we as a charity are actually more used to dealing with this issue with British people who, let's say, they can't find a job over here because of their criminal convictions. They don't want to be stuck on benefits, and just taking money off the taxpayer. So they think, right, I'll go abroad and I'll use my talents there. And other countries, America's a good example of it. It's very difficult to get into that country. And if you've got a criminal record with particularly any sort of dishonesty involved, then they're going to struggle to let you in for a holiday, never mind for a job. I mean, whether that means that we should apply the same thing back again, I don't know. I think it's more the point that we should maybe solve it internationally.
Okay. And just moving away from the specific case of Mike Denton here, a point that Tony Hackett's made on the Facebook page, he says, in theory, if he served his time and reformed, he should be given another chance. The problem, says Tony, will always be, how can you be sure that someone has reformed? What does, how long should you wait? What does reform mean? What's your view on how you can ever be sure that someone's turned a leaf here?
Well, it's very difficult. The reality of reform is that it happens inside somebody's mind. Somebody could be reformed in the very moment that they commit a criminal act. Somebody could go their whole life and never really change. The only way you can really do it sensibly, and it's not fair, but the only way you can do it sensibly is around time, and that is obviously got to be based. People have got to have time to rebuild the trust with the community. If it's a simple, basic, pretty minor crime, a year after a fine or a community sentence seems reasonable. After a prison sentence, maybe a couple of years longer. I mean, it doesn't necessarily match to what's actually happening in people's minds, but the reality is the community does need time just to see that somebody has changed. But a couple of years seems reasonable. The statistics show that if you go 2 years without reoffending, the chances of you being reconvicted in the future drop off to basically zero. So that seems reasonable.
Chris, got to leave it there. Appreciate your time there tonight. Thank you very much indeed. Chris Barth, who is the Executive Director from Unlock, that's the National Association of Reformed Offenders.